where do you get your inspiration? Then I know it's quite an open
Yes.
question,
No,
but
of
I
course.
mean, do you see the music as your first priority, or is it the text, design, or the stagecraft, or I mean, what comes first in your...
The story, I think, for me, I think that the music is extremely inspiring in terms of wanting to give it the best platform. If it's a piece that I feel I can understand and empathise with. We've just done Marriage Figure at the Opera House, and that's of course one of the best best operas and one of the best stories. And there you absolutely want to give the music clarity and the central part in the storytelling that you think it should have. But at the same time, you have to understand that Mozart started also with the story. First with the Beaumarchais and then with the Da Ponte libretto, which he would have worked on as well. But it existed, and that's what inspired him. And he, in a sense, was the first director. I sometimes think it's important to feel that the story's been directed once by a composer. In other words, it's been given certain parameters that you have to understand. But you can't just take the music and try and stage up. Well, you could do anything. I mean, you could do that if you wanted. But for me, it's really important to understand what the music's trying to say. And that means you have to start with the story, start with the text, and then take on board the music. So I feel they're both very inspirational, but the central point has to be the story, what you're trying to communicate to an audience, what you're trying to do. In its storytelling opera, that's what it is. It's not pure music. If it was pure music, there's plenty of symphonies, there are plenty of quartets. That's not what Mozart wants. That's not what Verdi wants. We've just done Orfeo. It's the same thing. And actually, you do hear people say, especially with some productions which can be felt to be a distraction, and sometimes they can be, even with the best intentions. They have a tendency to think that they just want the music, and I think that's a mistake. You have to come expecting a storytelling experience, and a particularly emotional, wonderful, visceral one if it's an opera. But it has to be storytelling. That's the thing for me.
And I think also when you read some reviews of productions as well, I think sometimes the singers are a little bit unfairly judged as well. You know, you'll get critics who say, this singer didn't quite sing perfectly, this singer didn't quite get the high notes, but that's not the point,
Not
you
the
know.
point. Did they communicate?
Exactly.
Did they communicate a character, a story? Did they communicate emotion? I agree, and they should be able to take risks.
Exactly.
I think, just going back to your question too, that the stagecraft, the look of it, the beauty of it, and they're all really important to me, especially the stagecraft, the discipline about how we tell a story. And you get people in a room, and you have to respect them, and you have to have a humility about what you're doing, and a sense of service about it, which means that their discipline is critical. You can't just go in there and express yourself the way you want, especially in an ensemble piece, and they always are. They always are. There's not a single opera which isn't in some way, well, in some huge way, a team event. And I think that's critical for me too. So everything that you asked is critical in the end, as long as the storytelling and the music are not compromised.
Okay. So what do you do then in order to get your colleagues to tell the story, in order to get them to take risks? I mean, how many of them are willing to open up during the rehearsal process, or... I don't know. I mean, please tell me.
It's a really good question. You know, hopefully everybody comes to those rehearsals wanting the same things. But everybody's different, and everybody's at a different stage. Everyone has a different level of natural ability. And it's my job, or the job of any director, or the team, the creative team, to put people at their ease, but give them the help that they need while maintaining that kind of high standard. That's why, going back to the reason I started this, that's why I think it's so important that directors do have a really, ideally, a profound understanding of stagecraft, of what it is that an actor does to be successful. You know, the ancient skill of rhetoric, of speech making. There's an ancient art of communicating with your voice and your body to persuade someone of something, to move them, to affect them. But it's almost a science from classical times and then in the Renaissance. And the idea that the director should be unaware of that, or blasé about that in some way, or not care. And certainly there are many that work in different ways, of course, and leave all that just up to the singer. It's not my way, but I do think that there are many ways of doing it, and every single person, every single singer on the stage needs in a way their own help, and some need no help at all, and some need to be really given some discipline, and some need to be really encouraged to be free, and that can make for a really interesting process.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things I love. It's a fascinating element.
Yeah, so I mean, will you have discussion about, the characters and their intentions? Will you do exercises during the rehearsals?
It very, very much depends on the group and the people. It should be a lot of discussion. At the same time, there very rarely is real time, to indulge in that too much, and there needs to be this empathetic approach from the director, where there's also very clear leadership about how this production is going to work, what people need to get in behind and follow through on to make the best of what they can give. I think that there is a lot of discussion in terms of exercise, sort of younger and less formed group of formers that you might be working with. The easier that is to do. If you're dealing with an international star who's in his 60s and has done the part several times before, you need very few words.
Okay.
Really, and very few. It would be presumptuous to do too much. They come used to fitting into new productions, ideally, and so it depends very much on who you're with. Sometimes exercises can be extremely helpful, but for me it's a responsive thing. I wouldn't go in thinking this is how I'm going to make this character work. I need to work with the singers, and I need to work with the people in the room. And if there's an idea that I get at one point which I think this will really help, of course I'll do it. You need to put an open mind on all those things. I think anything that helps achieve the right level of storytelling clarity, you should explore if the time allows.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Can I just say, Annabelle, that one of the interesting things that I talk to people, I find myself talking a lot about at the moment, is this idea of previews. Theatre has previews.
Yeah.
And what that means is it's not just an opportunity to get an audience in and get the performers used to an audience, but you then go back into the rehearsal room.
That's right, yeah.
And it affects what you do.
They have it in musicals as well,
and
don't they?
Of course they do.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, apart from opera and ballet, every form of... I'm not sure there are many other forms that actually...
No.
But essentially, it's an odd thing that opera doesn't. And I think it's actually a problem which is central, even, sounds grand to say it, to the survival of opera as a form. Because if you don't have previews, what happens is you don't get back into the rehearsal room after an audience has been.
Yeah.
And then singers go back to what they are comfortable with. They will try and get laughs, then you might get a certain amount of laughter from an audience.
Yeah.
The discipline can go very quickly. And then a director who works with that starts to think, how am I going to survive myself? Because the show can't be good in the way necessarily that I want it to be. So, and then they come up with these wilder concepts, and they try and make an impression themselves, and then the designer does the same, and suddenly you get a spectacular thing that might look amazing, but there's no real human truth
substance.
in it. No substance, no truth to it, no proper theatre, no proper story.
They're just kind of, doing all the crazy stuff for the sake of it. Do you know what I mean?
To try and make it a shock, to try and make an impression. And their career's dependent, and I don't blame them in a sense for 1 minute. It's the system, it's the way we do it, which needs an overhaul, and it needs to be discussed. It needs to be brought out. This idea: how do we make sure that our storytelling is clear to the audience? You have to take risks to be good, to be real, to be. So how if you find out very quickly it doesn't work, if you have a singer who's playing for laughs and you find that the audience doesn't laugh quite as much as they could, of course, because if you play for laughs, they're unlikely to be the right kind of laughs. Then you can say to the singer, and you can work through and say, do you see how that didn't work? And how actually, if you played the situation for real, you would have a much higher success rate. Then everybody wins. And I can think of ways that could be done, although it's a big overhaul.